With $540 per month, sign up for Sagicor School Companion today. Conditions apply. The time by Sagicor Life is
7 o'clock, and it's time for the Morning Watch.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Welcome to the Morning Watch with Stokeley Marshall.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, examining safe spaces. And in second watch, customers versus banks, consumer rights policies and the law. What don't we know? For our social media question, we ask, what or where is the safest place for you? Where is the safest place for you? Share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-9973-125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your response later on the program. But first is I quote.
This morning's I quote, what you're not changing, you're choosing.
What you're not changing, you're choosing. And why is it that all of these very earth-moving, deep I quotes are written by someone who is unknown? Why are
they don't want to be known?
This is a profound I quote. What you're not changing, you're choosing. And I think this person is right. Good morning, Dr. Blair. How are you?
Good morning, Stokeley. I'm doing well. Looking forward to the discussion because I want to know where is safe.
Yes, and in fact, in terms of what is safe, I'll make a slight correction. The question is actually, where is the safest place you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the safest place you know? Good morning again, Dr. Blair. The first watch will be back after this break.
Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. Makes every day better by Christmasing with you. You can enjoy the best prepaid mobile plans and big Christmas winnings. Win data and credit instantly every time you activate any unlimited prepaid plan. Unwrap your SMS message to claim your instant gift and get automatically entered for a chance to win cash, grocery vouchers, and smartphones every week and a $500 million grand prize. Christmasing is wrapped up in winning. Download the Top Up Flow app. Visit topupflow.com to activate and win today. Offer ends January 2, 2025. Conditions apply.
La 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 la. Did you hear that? It is almost Christmas and Foxwich is having a super solar lighting sale. Yes, you heard right. From now until November 25th, enjoy 20% off your selection of solar wall lamps, garden lights, and solar flood lamps. You can't afford to miss the sale. It is the Foxwich Super Solar Lighting Sale, now until November 25th. Visit us in Kingston, Mandeville, Montego Bay, and Draxall. Shop and save, only with Foxwich.
When they begin to crawl, changes are easy to Disney.
When tape diapers are difficult to change, it's time for Pampers Easy Up. They're easy to put on and take off, keeping their skin protected.
When they begin to crawl, changes are easy to Disney.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Kay. She loved to dance and play. One day at school, she got very ill, and Mom was left with an unbearable bill. It would be easier if Mom was prepared. With School Companion, 80% of the bill is cleared. Medical care for children is a must. For as low as $2,540 per month, make unbearable medical bills go away. Sign up for Sagicor School Companion today. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm Stokeley Marshall. Safe spaces. What are they? We have opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damon Crawford, who has proposed that in light of the recent surge in violence literally around education institutions, the introduction of a new law to establish safe spaces around key institutions such as schools, hospitals, and transport terminals is necessary. Now, is this a practical solution? We have no one from the government side on today, and perhaps shortly we will attempt to do so. But for today, we have opposition senator, spokesperson on education for the People's National Party, Senator Damon Crawford. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, my brother. Good morning to your listeners and your team.
Now, Senator, how would these spaces be measured, maintained, and monitored? What are we really going in terms of safe spaces?
All right. So first of all, as you have indicated, we are having a change in criminality and the approach to criminality. It is a crazy concept to suggest that crime has become more indisciplined, because there were times that there were places that were by social norms off limits.
Forgive the slight shock, Senator.
Yes.
Becoming slightly more indisciplined.
Not slightly, extremely more. There was a time in our time when we were growing up, we just don't go to certain places. It was contained. There were spaces like church that was off limits, even in the criminal mind, by the norms of the society.
Yes.
And schools. And there were people who were children, etc., were not likely victims. No, if you can't catch Quaco, you catch all his shirts, it's full crackers. It's now crazy how they have approached life. So when the society changes, when the norm changes, then the laws must also change to satisfy that. Now, safe spaces, as I've indicated, I believe should include and can be extended to schools, bus terminals, hospitals, and churches. Should be designated safe spaces. It would mean, firstly, that they are properly outfitted with camera, CCTV, and connected to Jamaica Eye. We have seen a murder at Homewood, and we can't get any evidence because we have no camera system. It should be policed often by we believe, roving police, and not necessarily stationary. But if we have the resources, stationary would be even better. But a general concept of uncertainty of police presence based on the constant roving through the areas. And it should include an individual, a higher criminal prosecution, a higher penalty for the persons who commit a crime within the space, therefore serving as a deterrent for committing a crime in the space. We recommend 1.5 times. So if you have a gun in a safe space, it's not 15, it's 15 times 1.5. If you commit a murder in a safe space, it's not 30 years, it's 30 times 1.5. And it goes as far as traffic tickets, robbery, all kinds is 1.5, whether it is a fine or the prison term. So that is what we defined as a safe space. We suggest it should be 400 meters radius of the perimeter of the space. So if it's a school, the fence of the school is the outer perimeter, and any crime within 400 meters of any of the radius of that perimeter would be within the safe space. That is how we define it.
400 meters is like the track at the national
It's
stadium.
like the track at the National Stadium.
Yeah.
So to kill a person outside of the school is not much safer than to kill them inside the school. The trauma, the likely presence of students, etc. So that is why we gave a radius. Now, persons of greater expertise may say 200, may say 600. Our current recommendation, without the total expertise of ministries and the resources of ministries, is to suggest a consideration of 400.
Do you have a genesis for the whole concept of safe spaces, and what might that genesis be?
Well, the genesis is the continued criminal activities that are circulating schools. Persons
Maybe I should have been more specific. Is it that you saw where such a measure or initiative was adopted?
I've not seen that in the global space. I'm doing some research now to see if that exists in the global space. However, sometimes we can lead. We don't have to follow at all times. So if not, maybe we will become the example to countries. But what I am sure is that we have not seen an equal spiraling of criminal activities, including robberies of schools in many developed countries. So we might have to expand our research to less developed countries.
Now, how do you balance, or how do you deal with the issue of increasing the safety of the space by having more police, law enforcement generally, it would appear, and cameras to see what's happening in the safe space, use of Jamaica Eye? But one can make the case, on the other hand, that this is more surveillance or even mass surveillance. So some persons may think, well, there hasn't been a crime here in a while, but every time I leave or enter this particular facility, I'm being watched. That can create a level of discomfort for some persons, or many persons actually.
I understand, and I also
any comments on that, because there's increasing concern about surveillance.
I understand the concern, and I also have always accepted that there is space for disagreement. I am not one who buys into the increased surveillance in public spaces being a major problem. Once you go into your private space, then increase in surveillance, I have concern. But the schools are currently public spaces. The terminals are public spaces. And the surveillance is not a 24-hour general surveillance. It is a surveillance that creates, reduces the risk of criminal activity and creates evidence that leads to the surety of capture, that leads to the swiftness of capture, and then we add the severity of punishment. Those are the three S's of deterrent.
And
so I think that's necessary.
Only because of time, Senator, I just want to quickly ask, the safe space would include not just the perimeter of the facility, but also within the perimeter of the facility, within the fences, within the walls?
That's what I'm saying, that the 400, the radius of 400 meters would be the safe space. So it is in 400 meters of the perimeter, not just the perimeter of the space. So we can always discuss where cameras exist, but at least for the penance, for the penalty, the perimeter would be 400 meters.
So if it were a school, it would be also within the schoolyard and within the classroom itself?
Yes. It is, that would be the nucleus, that would be the center.
And then the perimeter of the center. If it were a church, it would be in the churchyard as well as in the sanctuary.
I don't know what you mean by in the sanctuary.
Within the chapel or within the
church building. Within the total church space would be a safe space. And then it extends to...
So the cameras that connect to Jamaica Eye would be actually watching the pastor preach?
No. Well, that is what I'm saying. The positioning of the camera would be where the entrance points are, etc. So before a person can go on the pulpit, he will have to enter the yard. He will have to cross the perimeter. So it could be at the gate.
These are some of the practical nuts and bolts I'm inquiring about, because it creates some level of concern for some persons. They want
No. We would never put the camera in the church itself, but it might be positioned so it's in the door. So when a person enters the door, it might be positioned so that it sees the door. And again, as I said, the opposition unfortunately don't have the resources to have all the experts, such as camera placement and likely breach experts and stuff like that. So it is a concept that can be developed once we get the power to hire the persons who are experts in the area, including of surveillance that the what would you call the equilibrium between safety and surveillance. Those are persons who are trained in that area that can assist.
Senator Crawford, only because we're upon a break, can you hold the additional thought there for a moment? Because there are a lot more, there's much more to ask of you. Listeners, please stay with us. Very important and very interesting conversation with Senator Damon Crawford. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Save on your PSA and pap smear tests with your NHF card. Get $1,600 off your PSA test and $1,300 off your pap smear test. Apply for the NHF card today. The time by the National Health Fund is
7:15.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the first watch, having a very interesting conversation on the topic examining safe spaces. Apologies. Our guest is Senator Damon Crawford, opposition spokesperson on education. We don't have anyone today from the government side. Perhaps in the near future, we will attempt to ensure that we have someone on. Very interesting discussion with you so far, Senator Damon Crawford. You're advocating for safe spaces. You have defined what safe spaces are and the perimeter or the extent of the safe space beyond even I think you used the term nucleus at some point, beyond the exact location of the safe space, such as the school or the church, but beyond it, you're proposing 400 meters. Now, Senator Crawford, there is another concern. Unfortunately, some Jamaicans, unfortunately, are not very respectful of certain types of facilities. Some persons will see the cameras and will destroy them.
Yes.
Some persons may just put on a mask and go into the safe space to commit a crime.
Yes.
And then you have issues of identification. We can't identify who is this person because they're wearing a mask right up to their eyes.
Yes.
Any concerns about that? Because it's one thing to implement this, but practically speaking, how do we ensure that it works?
First of all, this is a deterrent, which doesn't mean that it will be 100% prevention. Now, the first layer of deterrent is the constant police presence. So that is one layer of deterrent. Constant police presence also leads to quicker reaction time and quicker intervention time. The second layer of deterrence is the cameras. Now, if the cameras are functional, then the individual who is wearing a mask then immediately becomes a concern within surveillance. And so his mask would have to then be delayed until he's in close proximity. And that's one of the reasons why we have also put a radius, because there will be other cameras within that space that we can increase the likelihood of catching him. Not totally reduce the probability of him escaping, but increase the likelihood of catching that individual. And the third layer would be the prevention through sentencing, through harsh punishment. So therefore the conversation is, would it be a higher risk for me to execute my robbery in a school zone as versus in a safe space as versus in a non-safe space? Would it be at higher risk for me to execute my murder in a school zone? And so basically we are indicating to these individuals not to do so. Now, again, there are camera experts that would talk about location of cameras for less likely tampering. There are others that will speak to positioning of cameras so camera can watch cameras. And then there's the government's commitment, I believe, to replace and continue to replace until we get to a point of persons recognizing that they won't defeat us, that they won't win the battle. They will have to basically execute a tampering every minute of the day, because we replace them every minute of the day, and continuously put procedures in place to reduce the capacity to tamper and the sentencing for those who tamper.
It's an interesting idea, Senator Crawford. I do have some concerns, and many others may have some concerns about the issues of surveillance, but that's another discussion. Perhaps we could have another program on that. But the cost, what is the sort of cost you think could be entailed, or have you given thought to that? And it's one thing to talk about putting these things in place, but what is a cost?
Well, cameras have come down in price exponentially. I just put some cameras along my farm, which is about 3 acres. And I've done 140 cameras. It was less than $3 million. So cameras, the cost of cameras have come down exponentially.
There are lots of churches, Senator.
Yes, indeed. And there's also $1.3 trillion in the government budget.
And by the way, when you say schools, sir, are you including, like, for example, what we call basic schools? There are quite early childhood education institutions, including those as well?
Yes, and if you have staggered implementation, then there will be security analysis, etc. But I believe that all 1,010 schools, primary, secondary, and I would expand it to include some basic schools. Indeed, I must admit that wasn't a consideration until you mentioned it, because it was really the current government schools, for which most basic schools are not government schools. But I would see no basis that a person attending a non-government school should not have that protection.
And I was actually going to go into the area of non-government schools. There are a number of private schools. And we know that we have some private schools that are regarded as, they might be able to fend for themselves financially. But you have other private schools that are not so fortunate. Is that something you are also thinking about?
So what's the expense? The expense is the camera. What a school might need 4, might need 5 cameras. So that is not an extensive investment from government side. And then I'm sure you'll have partners such as USAID and others willing to participate in the safety of children and the general security of our society. And then you'll have to have an increase in the force multiplier, which is like motor vehicles, so that they're roving, because currently we're short on police motor vehicles. You'll have to invest effectively in that. So those would be the general costs, but these are not costs that will make it impossible to implement. These are costs that will make us have to focus on what we think is important.
And in terms of the police resources, officers to do this monitoring, there might even be times when you might need to call in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. The availability of these officers, especially when you have other grave issues occurring in the country and the commissioner may want to call on these same persons in the safe spaces to go elsewhere. Any thoughts?
That is why we have a thing that they call a force multiplier for police force, army, etc. Vehicles, for example, is one of which allows for less police to quickly survey a wider expanse as versus if they're on foot, motorbikes, etc. So there will be a need for that investment. In that, there might also be a need for a slight increase in the number of police persons, because I don't believe that there is a cost that we can say is too high to protect children, our children. And I don't believe that there's a cost that we can say is too high to protect our society, the security of our society. So we might have to do less bushing or whatever it is. We might have to make sure we collect all the funds that the government is due. But I believe it is necessary for us to implement a system of security and protection for citizens, one of which includes having spaces that they can feel comfortable to send their children and to exist. We have had about 2 murders at Russell Primary alone of parents going to pick up their children. One youngster witnessed the murder of his father, and while he might have survived physically, I'm sure the mental turmoil that he's experiencing can only lead to a more difficult quality of life for that child. And there's no expense that I would spare to make that be the last child to experience that.
Well, let's look a little bit more at expense as well as the mental issues involved, because apart from the cameras costing something, the cost can be looked at. But then there is a whole matter of maybe additional vehicles, as I think you have indicated, and maybe additional motorbikes.
Which is necessary without safe spaces. We have some police stations without a vehicle.
No, but I mean, we are focusing on safe spaces today.
Yes, so we would have to increase the number of motor vehicles. Yes.
Right. And you might even need a couple of police posts here and there. We don't know, depending on where the
with a vehicle, a post is not necessary because the vehicles will then call in the response.
Okay, so you're saying you don't think posts would be necessary. So,
No.
But let's look at the mental issues now to change gears slightly, which you have sort of done already.
Right.
How do you think? Well, I don't want to ask it that way because I mean you're a senator, you're not working in the mental health sector, but I'm just asking myself, you know, if a child goes to school and they get accustomed to seeing law enforcement almost, I don't want to say 24/7, but you know, for the greater portion of the day are in and around their school, and then they go to church and they see this. Is this any comments on how this can affect the psyche of the very same children we're trying to protect? Because
we're hoping that it improves it. We are hoping that they see the police as a friend. We're hoping that they see the police as a source of greater security and that they feel safe around the police. Just this Sunday, I don't know if it's like in Medina, there was a school that has a space, I think, for 1,000 children, and it's only at 200 and something children on the basis of crime and criminality. And the principal said that they heard, the principal, had to call the police to ask if it is possible to open the school on that particular day. We would hope that the presence of police would give those children a greater confidence of their own safety and security. And if it doesn't, then we need to put a marketing program in place to reposition the police in the minds of the public as friends of the public and enemies of the criminal. Unfortunately, many Jamaicans.
That's fine to an extent, I think, Senator. But you know, just the whole idea of seeing persons all around all the time in uniform with firearms, etc., it can have somewhat of an effect, perhaps, on some children. But I leave that for someone who can comment more specifically on the mental issues. But I just wondered about that. And going forward, what do you propose in terms of a timeline for this that you're proposing? You would need legislation in place, and also you haven't really mentioned, I don't know if you've given thought to this, of the role of the church and other persons who can lend a hand on the softer side, because you did indicate that the country is just becoming, you know, the criminality, as you put it, is becoming indisciplined, which is an interesting way to put it. So it sounds as if there needs to be an increase in how people think, the values that they have and the attitudes that they have, and even the spiritual side in terms of, why would I do this to my neighbor? Any final comments you want to give?
Well, first of all, the church must play a central role in the re-socialization of the society, in the socialization component of education, and in the education component of education. Unfortunately, the church has kind of allowed everybody to bully them into taking a back on everything within the society. One thing we are promoting in the education proposal of the People's National Party is that Sunday school and Sabbath school also be engaged in the literacy component of the education process.
That's very interesting, Senator. We could have a program on that.
A whole program on that. We're also looking at music education to be a part of the church's contribution to their community. The children can go. The church often have its own instrument, and so we'll have music clubs centered around the churches, like on a Wednesday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon. And a part of your mission, your missionary effort, is to incorporate these young boys into bands of playing guitar, playing things. That's a part of the way the church rolls. The inter-secondary school Christian Fellowship, ISDF, we want one in every school, as well as we want a police youth club in every school.
Amazing.
Again, to create socialization effort.
You sound like an evangelist, Senator. I never heard a politician say things like this before.
Well, if you look at communities and societies that were progressive and were improving, the Lord was at the center of government.
Lord was at the center of government.
Yes,
Senator, I
yes,
think we're
yes,
completely and totally out of time or just about. But in 1 second, legislation timeline, who's drafting this legislation? When will you
No,
propose
remember,
it?
we're opposition. We only can make a record. So until the government accepts or until the government changes, we are only a mic and not a pen.
Okay. Senator, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts
Thank
this
you very
morning. I
much.
thought maybe you had some sort of proposal in terms of legislation,
This
in terms
can
of...
be ended in 14 days because I've seen where IMF legislation came and was passed in a day. I've seen that in my
Senator
time.
Crawford, we're totally out of time. I want to thank you for your time and for your thoughts this morning. Very interesting discussion. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back at the Morning Watch.
Thank you.
Get the best holiday shopping deals this festive season at the Jane Mall. November 29 to December 1 at the parking lot of Jane Bank halfway tree. The time by Jamaica National Group is
7:30.
Jamaica, we are paving the way for prosperity. Under the SPARK program, the government is investing over $40 billion to improve our community roads and infrastructure, smoother roads, safer travel, and a more efficient economy. That's what this investment means for you. Every mile we build is a step toward prosperity.
Brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Every Thursday morning, Love 101 shares with you power-packed messages, words of encouragement, and testimonies of God's miraculous power. You get all of that in the Don't Give Up broadcast, brought to you by Celebration Church at the Portmore Skating Ring in the Portmore Mall with Pastor Prophet Michael Carter. Be sure to stay tuned to Love 101 for the Don't Give Up broadcast. Get the word you need to start your day right. The Don't Give Up broadcast, Thursdays at 5:15 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
A time with double up your savings. Double up the things that you've been awaiting. Put in the water, dreams you've been chasing. Double up your savings. Double up.
so you can win in the Jane Bank Double of Your Savings promotion. You could be one of 5 lucky quarterly winners to walk away with double the money you put in your savings account. Conditions apply.
Double up your savings.
Check our website and social media for details. Jane Bank will help you find a way. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marsh. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have here in the Gleaner some stories of concern here. Major blow. A major fire on Ashram Road in St. Andrew on Monday has left, that was yesterday, has left millions of dollars in damage, destroying 90% of Pure Ice Factory's assets and all of the inventory Azan Supercenter was storing for its Crossroads branch. And this would have been for the upcoming Christmas season. And we have another story of concern here. Vendors cry for help as arcade fire obliterates 95 stalls. Emergency responders and teary-eyed vendors worked tirelessly on Monday, that was yesterday, to salvage goods as a raging fire destroyed 95 shops at the Purnell Child's Arcade on Church Street in downtown Kingston. A lot there to deal with. We now turn to the Daily Observer. This is a story on the front page of the Daily Observer. Light penalty for teen sex convict. Appeal court cuts 15-year sentence of boy who sexually assaulted 8-year-old girl. This story by Alicia Dunkley Willis. We have on the front page of the Daily Observer story, for which more details can be obtained at page 3 of the Observer. PM, Prime Minister sympathizes with tourism workers, meets stakeholders. And finally, we have in Loop Jamaica news, Wholeness breaks silence on tourism workers' protests, says employees deserve a fair share of the growing hospitality pie. And Fire Brigade, another story here in Loop Jamaica News. Fire Brigade recommends fire mitigation measures for markets. Now that's interesting. Fire Brigade recommends fire mitigation measures for markets. Those and many other stories in our news sources. Coming up next, we'll read for some feedback from our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp question, which is, where is the safest place you know? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses in our Facebook or YouTube Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes too. 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
It's a one in a million feeling. When I start to ring, everyone starts to sing. Let's keep on giving. Christmas in Jamaica. Flow makes every day better. Christmas thing with you. Everyone who signs up for Yard and Rope for only $5,300 plus GTC gets a $25,000 supermarket card. Plus 5 lucky customers could win extra cash of $1 million each. Christmas thing is the most. Offer ends December 31, 2024. Conditions apply.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Kay. She loved to dance and play. One day at school, she got very ill, and Mom was left with an unbearable bill. It would be easier if Mom was prepared. With School Companion, 80% of the bill is cleared. Medical care for children is a must. For as low as $2,540 per month, make unbearable medical bills go away. Sign up for Sagicor School Companion today. Conditions apply.
Stop and win a mega kitchen from Megamart. Spend $6,000 or more before GCT at any Megamart location and fill out the entry form provided for a chance to win a brand new stove, fridge, and microwave this Christmas from Appliance Traders Limited. Visit us on social media to win monthly prizes courtesy of Lasco, Grace Foods, and Facey Commodity Company Limited. Promotion runs from September 30 to December 6th. Shop now to win a mega kitchen from Megamart. Best value by far. Conditions apply. Must be 18 years or older to enter. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Now, for your responses to our social media question, where is the safest place you know? Dr. Blair?
All right, let's see. I see a response here. So, and it's more like a question. So, good people must give up their privacy because of bad people. Locks. No, not because it's public space. It doesn't mean I want my privacy invaded.
That is an interesting
comment. Leave my private space alone. And I'm trying to see if we have any other response on our socials. Not seeing any. So
I did raise that issue of privacy with the minister.
But it's the time that we're living in.
Not the minister, my apologies. The senator.
Yes, it's the time we're living in. Yeah. So what is to be?
I raised that issue with the senator. How do
maybe
you balance?
Maybe the private space has to be more privater. I said that on purpose, but more private, meaning if you're inside your home, the cameras won't be inside your home. So you have to think differently about, your private when you want to be alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
cherish that place.
And 400 meters, is a long, wide radius away from the facility. So the cameras will be if the school is next door to you.
Yeah.
Your yard, your property is in that home.
Well, I mean, but it does bring another level of security, right?
I know. Forgive me, I'm a human rights practitioner as well. Well, let me clarify. I teach human rights and I deal with human rights issues in my practice from time to time. So I'm very sensitive to
about that.
Very, very sensitive to that. But thank you, listeners, for
one other person just says the only safe place is in Jesus, nowhere else. Spiritually, man. Stokeley, over to you.
Well, we move right into the second watch, and a few weeks ago, changing gears now, a few weeks ago, the National Commercial Bank and Uber and some mutual customers were caught up in what is called a transaction kerfuffle. In all the confusion and while probing this issue, it seemed that rights of some innocent, unsuspecting customers were forgotten, or maybe they didn't know or were not told of their rights. Now, what really happened in this whole issue of NCB and Uber? What really happened, and what other policies are we not aware of or should be aware of? What's in the fine print? What we never see or read or don't understand? We have as our guest this morning Michael Diamond, President of Consumers Intervention Jamaica and a trained lawyer. And we also have Fitz Jackson. Mr. Jackson, no stranger to the Morning Watch, as is Mr. Diamond. Fitz Jackson is an advocate for better banking practices, and he's also a member of Parliament for South St. Catherine. And of course, he's an opposition member of Parliament. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Diamond, good morning. Fitz Jackson.
Good morning to you, Stokeley, and of course, good morning to your listeners.
Mr. Diamond, you're with us so far. Mr. Jackson.
Oh, sorry,
Mr. Jackson.
Was
I think
good morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Am I seeing you, Mr. Jackson? Are you muted? Maybe you can unmute yourself, Mr. Jackson.
Okay. Not on my.
I think you're with us, Mr. Jackson, but maybe we're not hearing it for some reason. Mr. Diamond, in the interim, this whole matter of NCB, Uber, would you, for the benefit of the listeners, like to enlighten us as to what really happened? What were the allegations or what was the issue at hand? And very briefly indicate what, if anything, is happening at the moment.
Well, what I can certainly share is what was already in the public space, that there seemed to have been some type of glitch in the system application for Uber, and consumers would have utilized the services, and the charges that should have been, paid over to Uber didn't happen right away. And once the institution had discovered that there was a delay in sending over the payment, they went ahead and, of course, retrieved the funds from the consumer's account to pay over, which, of course, they would have utilized the service that would have caused that. Nevertheless, it became an outcry, obviously, because over for several weeks where individuals had used the service and it tallied up to a certain amount, that amount was taken in a one-shot transaction, and many of them wasn't budgeted for that. So it certainly created an issue. And we did have some reports that individuals had deliberately exploited the glitch, which they made mention on social media. And of course, that puts it at that point of identifying, what responsibilities that the institution or the customers have, but also what rights were breached for the consumers in that regard.
I see Fitz Jackson, Member of Parliament. Fitz Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Are you hearing me now? I'm hearing
Mr. Jackson.
I'm hearing you. But
I'd like to bring you in before the break, Mr. Jackson, because I know you probably have something to say to us on this matter.
Yeah.
Member of Parliament Fitz Jackson. Apparently, there's a slight technical issue here. We will try to have the matter resolved in the interim, Mr. Diamond. Continuing with you.
Yes, it would have certainly been beneficial to have Fitz on, because this also speaks to the issue of, what authority does the institutions have when they exercise that or the guise of being able to do so. For example, in going into a customer's account to retrieve funds that were a part of a past transaction, there's certain things called to question, obviously. And for while we're not condoning those who maliciously exploited it, we certainly want to make sure that good customers are not suffering for the bad ones.
Yeah.
And we have to look at what rights does the consumer have, especially when an institution is exercising control over the account to begin with. Are they abusing that authority just because they can? Or what parts of the regulations are they not adhering to?
We're Mr. Diamond, only because of time, but we're upon a break. Never enough time in the morning watch. Going to take a break right this time, listeners. We'll be right back at the morning.
Calling all those who have ever been called out.
no free ride. NCB customers cry out over Uber back charges. Several customers of NCB have expressed deep concern after being hit with charges for Uber rides all at once. Disgruntled customers have taken to social media platforms, particularly X, formerly Twitter, to detail shocking experiences of being blindsided by deductions for trips they took months ago, which have now collectively been withdrawn in one go. This back-charging process has left some individuals facing financial distress, with one user reporting a $1 million lien on their account. $1 million. The issue on the surface affected only NCB cards. With neither NCB nor Uber have responded to Gleaner queries, many affected customers took to the platform to share how the sudden withdrawals have disrupted their lives. Mr. Jackson, your thoughts? Mr. Jackson?
Hello?
Mr. Jackson, your thoughts?
You're very low.
Mr. Jackson, can you hear us now? You're asking for your thoughts, sir.
Yes. For service provider customer relationship. From what I gather, in your background overview of the matter, is that persons did incur the charge by virtue of using the service. And what is that the deduction or the charge for the use was not done on the reality. Many people live from day to day, paycheck, pay period. Number one. Number two, many people run their lives. So do not monitor their balances correctly as they perhaps ought to do. Until they spend for what they have or what they think they have. And what the charges that were made on a basis are earned. So that they lump in one lump. That create great hardship for the customer. And who, since it was their failure to have debit charges that they occurred, they should enter into some discussion with respect to customer plans and work something out. I'm not suggesting that the team should be free and they would have incurred the charge, use the service, and have an expectation to pay. But we have to be pragmatic. In a society where there are a lot of rich people, a lot of people with a high cash flow that they can incur large sums of payment obligations on. That's the reason why I said at the very outset that it appears to be a breakdown in the proper relationship in that circumstance.
From the legal side, and Mr. Diamond, forgive me, I'm not sure if you're practicing law in Jamaica at the moment, but I know you're a trained attorney, and you studied in another jurisdiction. In fact, you went to one of the most prestigious universities in the world, and you would be, and even from a consumer standpoint, you would be aware or familiar with, what we call fine print. Consumers, persons will sign things and they don't know what they're signing, or they didn't stop to read. And many of us, when you open these accounts or when we are given new terms of service, we just accept them. Mr. Diamond, your thoughts? Because the thought that, a lot of charges could be deducted all at once there's funds in the account. Any comments on that, Mr. Diamond?
All right. First thing, we do have to understand the landscape here. And many consumers, many of the bank customers, when they established those accounts, many individuals were not given the proper terms and conditions in a very conspicuous manner that they knowingly and willfully entered into those accounts.
In a very conspicuous manner, meaning it was like underlined in red ink.
Say that again, Stokeley.
Very conspicuous manner. So in other words, it's like it was shown to them up front that this is what you're doing, and it's as if it's underlined in red ink.
Even so,
bold print.
Conditions can be many pages, but nevertheless, you should have been handed a package that spoke to the terms and conditions for you to know what your responsibilities are, what the institution responsibilities are, and what would occur in such situation as far as back payments, back charges, etc. The fact of the matter is no banking institution just wholly has the authority to go into any customer's account and retrieve funds. It does not work like that. Hence why they would put a stop on the account, why they pursue legal channels to be able to take their funds. Because once funds are commingled, it is not as simply as going in and taking customers' funds. It doesn't work like that. And oftentimes it requires a declaration from a court. So in a situation with NCB, we don't know if in fact NCB has followed the proper channels. We're not condoning what occurred for those who maliciously, try to exploit the glitch in the system. But we have to protect the consumers, and we need a balance. And in protecting the consumers, it what will trigger institutions to operate more formally under the rules and regulations that govern them. Because if you ask any bank customers, how many of them actually receive a package that mentions the terms and conditions for maintaining that account? Not many. And we actually had a survey of the banking sector, which was performed by the World Bank, and it got a failing grade. And a part of that failing grade mentioned the fact that consumers and customers were not properly informed or given the terms and conditions in written form, even in electronic form, for them to have. So we have a situation where ignorance of the law is no defense. Nevertheless, the institutions with the control do exploit that level of ignorance that our consumers have.
Because Mr. Diamond. Yes, Mr. Jackson, yes.
So that I fully concur with those comments by Michael a moment ago. But to emphasize conspicuous information. That banking bill that I have before Parliament, one of the provisions of it is for the institution to highlight and bring to the customer any breach that would cause this material. He said, on their own. Many people don't get a package. You said, don't know what it is, I agree. But they don't know what it is. They know what it is. They know what the danger is to the customer. And we're saying that the obligation to identify those must be on the institution. They can't try to exploit the ignorance or negligence of the customer to their benefit. And also on a continuous and repetitive basis.
Gentlemen.
It is intended exploitation in those circumstances.
Gentlemen, only because of time, never enough time in the morning watch. In a couple of seconds, both of you, where do we go from here? Mr. Diamond and then Mr. Jackson.
Well, where we go from here is we definitely have to revisit the situation between customer and institution to make sure that the rules that govern the transaction are very clear on both sides. You can't enter into a contractual agreement without being fully informed. And that is one of the situations that created this condition we're in right now.
Mr. Jackson.
I know the concept that the government must play a leadership role in protecting the interest of the consumer. We are thinking to back up Jamaica to deal with customer issues. That is only to come on street in the next 2 to 4 years. A lot of people will stop waiting enormously before that time comes. The government needs to act and act now. It has a duty, a moral duty to protect those who are least able to protect themselves.
have to leave it there for today. Thank you, Mr. Diamond and Mr. Jackson. Very interesting discussion. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts, both of you gentlemen. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we look at other topical and controversial issues. Visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page, and now TikTok at Love 101 FM Jamaica for this and all other Love 101 FM programs. And of course, download our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the family station, Love 101 FM, the #1 gospel station in Jamaica. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathleen, and to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall, handing it back to Love in the Morning with Dr. Nadine Blair.
At the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we are committed to the values of care, compassion, excellence in service, integrity, teamwork, and innovation as we work to safeguard the health of our nation. The time for the Ministry of Health and Wellness is
8 o'clock. You're now invited to listen to Forward in Faith, brought to you